Look, it's been an amazing ride, just an extraordinary ride, and if nothing else, no one can accuse us anymore of not staying the distance.
What I want to do before we get too deeply into this interview is wind back the clock and in fact go to Sandown back in 1996 when Tony made his first announcement that he was going to become involved in this series.
Well, we've formed a joint venture company between the AMSC and TIGA and of course IMG to promote and market Group A touring car racing from the start of the 1997 season. Short term is to come up with a new look series right across the board for 1997, which will include races in New Zealand and Asia. Well, I think, you know, they're an Australian icon, really, and they are as much Australian as meat pies and kangaroos. We're going to make sure that it becomes a regional sport, not just a domestic one.
I have to say, Tony, there's some familiar phraseology and all that. We've been hearing that mantra for the last decade and a half. I know how it started, clearly, but can you explain to our fans how things got started? And one of the questions I get frequently is, what was the whole IMG thing all about?
Well, of course, when I first came up with the idea, it was actually my personal idea, and I ran a paper on it and tried to convince IMG into it. And, you know, now truthfully, of course, what happened, IMG were very interested in Bathurst. They had not a lot of interest in the thing I called a Vesco. And then within a very short space of time, of course, I ended up in a situation where I left IMG, and with James Erskine and Basil Scafidi and David Coe, we started SEL. So IMG structured, even before the company got going, structured a deal where we bought the 22.5% of Vesco, and IMG, as a quid pro quo, ran the first 4 or 6 Bathursts for us.
One of the things I want to do just while you're talking there, Tony, I've reached down and grabbed the V8 Supercars, The Whole Story, written by a mate of ours, Gordon Lomas. Probably a handy thing on a Father's Day weekend to promote, but it's got a bit of the yarn in here, hasn't it? Because, I mean, as you said at the top, it's almost impossible to tell what's a really complex story in this whole process. Yeah,
it is. It's an incredibly complex story, as you'd expect when you're dealing with all the macerations that we dealt with back then. I think Gordon's made a really good fist of trying to tell the story, and there's some parts of it I violently agree with and other parts I violently disagree with, but that's how any story goes.
We're right in the heart of a very vibrant location here on the Gold Coast, and you've got a relationship with this region of Australia. The series has. We've been coming here since back in 1994. We've been using this venue as a part of the championship since 2002, I think every year since 96. This is a very important market for the V8 Supercar company.
It is, because, and it was just fate. I mean, I lived here, so, and a couple of the teams were located here in those days, as 2 or 3 of the teams, and it's become our Charlotte, if you like. It's become, for, you know, the viewers who don't understand, Charlotte in North Carolina is the headquarters, the spiritual home of NASCAR. This has become our kind of spiritual home, the Gold Coast, and we've had a great working relationship with the government here throughout the whole length of that time. And, you know, we now have our own home event in the Armour All GC 600, which is just a great event, a great fun weekend, and we're delighted to be running it.
And you were the guy that headed up the original IndyCar operation here. That's how I first met you. I mean, that goes way back. A long time since John Andretti first won here on the streets of the Gold Coast back in '91.
Yeah, I got involved in, the government asked me to step into the Gold Coast race in '95. They were in a fair bit of trouble financially, and I got involved and we reconfigured it a bit, and one of the very first decisions I made, which preceded my involvement with Group A touring cars, was to bring Group A touring cars back onto the bill here on the coast. So, a lot of history. A lot of history. We're going to go to the break and remind you of some of that history, and in fact the racetrack just down the road over the years has generated plenty of action. Let's go back to 2005, where tempers flared on a couple of occasions.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Is it not in your car? What are you talking about? Come down. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, you stupid.
Wouldn't you know? Oh, I got an enemy, but I filled in the hole where he used to stand.
It's all in the back of your car, mate. No, it doesn't, mate. Lock the brakes on and avoid it.